How's it going, everybody? So we're out in the shop, and I know that a lot of y'all have had a chance to actually go through and watch the episode of me making this knife for the Gyuto, chef's knife challenge that we did with all the other, YouTube knife makers. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about with this particular knife is all of the stuff that you didn't get to see in that video. So for one, this knife almost didn't happen multiple times. So I started working on this knife just over a month ago, and I had to sit it down a bunch of times because I would be working on it and then something would go absolutely wrong. So when it comes down to it, there were a lot of trials and tribulations with that particular build. Now, whenever I initially started making it, I was thinking to myself, man, the billet's got to be so big, so I've got to start this off with a lot of material because there was a particular way that I wanted it to look. I wanted it to almost look like a skyline. So I wanted the steel rods to act almost as clouds in the actual thing, so whenever you're looking at it, I wanted the overall, let me see, there we go. I wanted this to actually resemble that, like a skyline with clouds and everything in the air with the copper. So the rods had to actually push in the copper in certain areas of this to be able to pull that off. And whenever you're actually looking at it right here, you see all of this, the rods in there and everything. And I wanted it to give that effect because it was something that I haven't seen in, well, really any knives that I've seen made with copper and steel and all that. But when it came to getting the billet together, the size that it had to be to able to put the copper in there, the actual steel that we were going to use for the edge, the rods, everything, it meant that the chunk of billet that we had to make, or the canister that we had to make, was absolutely massive. That canister that I welded up, that was 12 inches long, an inch tall, and 2.25 inches wide. So massive. Just think about that. 2.25 inches, inch tall, 12 inches long. Just to be able to make that knife. And this has just over a 7-inch cutting edge. So, just to be able to make that knife, I needed a billet that big because I was going to sacrifice a lot of material to get the knife to look how I wanted it to look. And there was a lot that went into it. I didn't know exactly what I was getting myself into. For one, if you've watched a lot of people who make billets with canisters that big, almost all of them use a press or a power hammer. I don't have a press, don't have a power hammer. So it took a lot of hammer forging. And I mean a lot. Hours and hours and hours of hammer forging to be able to get it to do everything that I wanted to do. Because what I had to do was heat it up to almost melting temperature, forge it down, and then just to compress it just a little bit to get stuff settled where it needed to go. And then I had to heat it up to melting temps for the copper so that whenever I started forging, it would push the copper in between the steel rods and move everything around enough to where it would create a seal around every copper rod, and then also almost braze itself to the 1084 center core. I needed to get it to melt and come together like that so that whenever I cut off the canister, which actually came off very easily, the mild steel that I used as the canister didn't really stick to the copper at all. It was absolutely awesome. All I had to do was cut off a couple of little sides, and then it just peeled right off. So I had to melt everything together, forge it down just a little bit to where I had an actual billet that I could start forging out, cut the can off, and whenever I did that, I realized that not everything stuck exactly how I wanted it to stick. So I had allotted for this. That's the reason why I had so much material in there. I knew that there was going to be something that went wrong, but I should have enough material to be able to forge to make it work out. So I went ahead, cut the can off, noticed that there was, little areas on there that wasn't working. So I was able to cut that section off, and then I was left with a decent sized billet to then start forging out. So I start forging it out, and it's going good, and then I start seeing a few little delaminations here and there. Luckily, they were in areas that was going to be ground off anyways, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But whenever you're this far into it and you start seeing delaminations, you start thinking to yourself, holy cow, I'm 15 hours into this. What the heck? This is going to be horrible. So you're able to get past it a little bit. I was able to cut off a few things. If you remember, whenever you're watching the video, it goes from, I'm going to have it playing right here as I'm talking about it. So it goes from the section forging out to where I have a chunk of billet, and then I'm forging that out. And then you can see it goes to another little section where I'm holding the steel with the tongs, and I've just got the copper area, and it's just kind of like a rectangle. We're forging that out. You can kind of see the copper folding over the center core a little bit as we're forging it. I knew that was going to happen, so I made sure we had enough in there. So then I cut that off, and then I have almost the knife shape a little bit. It's more rectangular, but we start forging that out and getting little delams and stuff like that out of it. And then we have almost the knife shape, but what ends up happening is the area where the handle is, almost all of the rod and copper didn't laminate to that. So I had little sections where it did stick and didn't stick, so I had to pull those sections off, cut them, pull them off, and then I had to forge all of the area where the copper and rods were good, which was the whole entire blade section. I had to forge all of that to the same thickness as the handle that was just a little bit of copper on either side and the center core. None of the steel rod. So I had to forge the blade down to match that section, and I was able to do that. And then I had to spend a lot of time on the grinder making sure that everything was straight and flat and even out the sides to where it looked like it was supposed to look on both sides. So one of my big things is I was able to forge it to where each side right here has the same look in the ricasso area, which I didn't know if that was going to happen. I was really happy that it did, but it took a lot of work to manipulate the steel. So I had ground everything flat again, and then I went back out into the forge, and I had to do some more forging to line everything up a little bit more, and then come back to the grinder, grind on it, and then finally get to where I have this billet that I really, really like, and then go, okay, cool, now it's time to start grinding in the bevels and doing that stuff. But in between the, me grinding on it and realizing, okay, everything's out of whack, what am I gonna do? I had to sit it down, wait a day, sometimes a day and a half, 2 days, get in my mind, okay, cool, maybe I can forge little sections and get everything to start lining up again. So then I'd go out to the forge, line this stuff up, go back to the grinder, okay, this is looking good. Okay, but I've got a little weird thing here that ends up being something that was kind of like a delamination. And then I had to sit it down, and then I thought, okay, after a couple of days, I'm betting that as I start thinning out the blade and I do the distal taper all the way through, that stuff's going to go away. And sure enough, as I start grinding away, it goes away. And there was just a lot of these little moments where I had to seriously take a step back, sit it down, and go, okay, let's think this through. How can we make this work? How can we make this work? Because at this point, I'd already had 30, 35 hours invested into this build, and I hadn't even done bevels or a handle or any of those things. Hand sanding, none of that. So it was a lot of time invested into it, but by the time it all came down to me being able to get right before I was putting the handles on, and I had the bevels done, I had some buffing done on it, and I was just looking at it going, I can't believe that I almost stopped this build multiple times and I wouldn't have had this particular outcome. And I'm so happy that, you know, just having the conversations with the guys. We had a Slack channel where we were able to talk to each other, and they had different things going on, and you know, we would have a couple of days go by where nobody said anything, and then they would, you know, somebody would pop on and say, hey, this thing is going on, or hey, we have questions about this, or hey, we're gonna do this with the videos. And it would make me go, man, those guys are putting in work right now. I need to get out there and I need to make something happen. And I'd go out there and boom, start making it happen, and then maybe run into another roadblock, and then, you know, sit it down for a day or so. Somebody would say something and I'd go, again, these guys are going to make something happen, and they're going to make beautiful knives. I know they are, and they, of course they did, but it just, those little moments of just someone talking about it remotivated me to be able to push through and make sure it happened. And I know that a lot of the times whenever people see these build videos that we put out, you know, I've said this in multiple different videos. You'll have people that you see the whole entire thing, the whole entire completion of a knife. You know, a lot of people put out videos where it is from start to finish one video. And they don't typically put all of the, you know, mishaps, errors, or things that went wrong in those videos. A lot of the stuff is the success stuff and what happens. One of the things that I love about one of the guys that was in this, you know, challenge was the Green Beetle. He puts a lot of his errors in there and cracks jokes about them and stuff like that, and I really like that he does that. But whenever I'm making my videos, I know a lot of them are series, they're build series where I don't do the start to finish in a singular video. A lot of them will be doing something, and then if it works or it doesn't work, you get to see it in the process because I'm going through it, I'm building it as we're releasing the videos. It's I would say more vlog-ish style version of them, but when it came down to this build, I wanted to be able to put it all in one video, but with doing that, because I had like 8 hours of footage, I wasn't able to put all of the mishaps in there because it would have been a really long video. And I wanted y'all to be able to easily digest it and maybe be able to talk about it later with the different things that didn't work out very well. But it is one of those things where it's okay to not have everything work out how it's supposed to and then still end up with something that is awesome. Because just y'all watching that whole video and seeing what ended up happening with it and that it was a great knife, it has insane edge retention. Absolutely insane. The chopping the wood section that y'all saw on there, you know, chopping it and then shaving my arm onto the freaking cutting board, that wood chopping, I'd already, at that point, cut a whole 2x4 in half, chopped into some old hickory, and took a full chunk out of that, and then did that chopping on that 2x4, and then shaved with it, and I hadn't sharpened it since me putting the original edge on it. So a whole 2x4, taking 2 inches out of some hickory, and then doing that chopping. You know, I had done all of that wood cutting before I was cutting the celery, and then went through and chopped into that 2x4 and did that, and then shaved with it. And this has a very, very, very fine edge. I mean, it is a very fine edge. And even with that, it's still absolutely shaving sharp, zero rolling, zero nicks, and looks like a brand new knife. So that just goes to show that, again, even though I had all of that stuff happen, I had a great heat treat, I've got great ergonomics, it's the most comfortable handle that I've ever put on a knife. Fits perfectly, you can chop with it, it's weighted just absolutely amazingly. That right there is right where your pinch goes on here. It's exactly where it's weighted. So, super happy with this. I've never made a chef's knife like this. I made one that was a kind of like a camp chef's knife, but it wouldn't really be considered a chef's knife. This was the first chef's knife I've ever completed, and we were able to do that. I'm super happy with that. I mean, it's one of those things where you push through all of the crap, you push through all of that, and you just make something absolutely happen because you are determined to be able to complete a build. And I'm really happy that I did that and that I didn't change my plan and start something completely different that was going to be more basic. I wanted to go outrageous. I wanted to, hand forge this massive billet to be able to make this particular knife. I wanted to do these things to show myself that I could do that and make it happen. And I feel like I did that. So I know this was a video primarily of me talking and not a whole bunch of action, but it is what it is. We do have a Shop Talk Tuesday coming up, and we are going to be working on our Shop Talk Tuesday build series knife. So if y'all are new subscribers, make sure y'all come to that. A lot of the Shop Talk Tuesdays are commentary based where I talk most of the time, but it's really educational. It's me breaking down the sections of knife making, so breaking them down into smaller sections so that they're more digestible. So you're not trying to watch an entire build video and learn everything from that one build video. I break them all down so that it's heat treating focused or sanding focused or handle focused, any of those things. So make sure y'all check that out. Plus, I'm about to start forging this knife. I don't know what exactly I plan on doing with it, but this is the small version of the two-handed knife. So that's going to be a really cool one. It is a small version of this. If you haven't had a chance to watch this particular series, this is a two-handed knife that I'm working on right here. Even forged out. So it's going to be awesome. It's going to be really ridiculous and huge, but we've got that stuff coming up. This week's Shop Talk Tuesday is working on the Tuesday knife, and Friday's, of course, working on getting this knife done with its shape and all that. I've got a different way that I'm going to do this particular knife. You'll see that when we do that video. That's going to be Friday's video, so be on the lookout for that, guys. That is the end of this one. If y'all would, leave me a comment down in the comment section what y'all thought about the the chef's knife build, and are there any projects that you've done throughout your life that have been just absolute, just come up to a wall and you push past it, come up to another wall, you push past it, come up to another wall, you push past it, and you end up with something awesome? What are those things? I want to know about those, so make sure you leave those in the comment section. Guys, thank y'all for coming by. If y'all would, give this video a thumbs up, share this video or one of my other videos. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe. Thank y'all for coming by, spending your time with me. Y'all have an amazing day. Y'all stay safe out there. I'll catch y'all next time.